Should definitely do it on a Monday, shouldn't I? Merp's Murder Mystery Mondays. The new true crime stream. It's murder tea time. During May, we were raising money for St Jude. We raised 1,000. What did we raise in the end? 1,092.69, 1,075.69, something like that. There was definitely a 69 involved because, nice. One of the incentives was to do a true crime stream, and the Somerton Man is like my favourite story, so I thought I'd tell this one. Yes, so the Somerton Man mystery is one of Australia's greatest unsolved mysteries. However, this year it may have been solved, but I'm slightly dubious as to what they think is going on because it doesn't quite add up, but we'll get to that part. But the reason this story interests me so much is I was listening to a BBC Sounds podcast, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what it's called. Yeah, so I was listening to this podcast, and it's done as a true crime podcast within a podcast. It goes very sort of Lovecraftian, supernatural, sci-fi. It's really well done, but they mention a book in, I think it's the second series, and then in the bonus episodes, they talk about this book and why it's sort of more widely known. And the reason it's more widely known is because of this story. So I heard about this story, went and did some research, and it's just like, what the hell? We'll go through it step by step, and each part is just like, huh? What? Huh? Are we ready for the Somerton Man mystery? This is Somerton Man. Quite happy. Sat on a beach, nice sandy beach as well. On the 1st of December 1948 at 6:30 a.m, police were contacted after the body of a man was discovered on the Somerton Park beach near, now I'm not Australian, but Glenelg, that place, which is about 11 kilometres southwest of Adelaide. The man was found lying in the sand, which was on the corner of the Esplanade and Bickford Terrace. He was lying back with his head resting against the seawall, his legs extended, and it was believed he just died, as you can see there, it just looks like he was having a nap. There was an unlit cigarette on the right collar of his coat. It's almost as if, whether it had been in his mouth as he fell asleep, passed away, and then sort of dropped off onto the collar. A search of his pockets revealed an unused second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, a bus ticket from the city that may not have been used, a narrow aluminium comb from the USA, a half-empty packet of juicy fruit chewing gum, an Army Club cigarette packet which contained 7 cigarettes of a different brand, and a quarter-full box of matches, which again sort of tallies up with being a smoker. Witnesses who came forward said that on the evening of the 30th of November, so the night before, that they had seen an individual resembling the dead man lying on his back in the same spot where the corpse was later found. A couple who saw him at around 7 p.m. noted that they saw him extend his right arm to its fullest extent and then drop it limply. Another couple who saw him from 7:30 to 8 p.m, during which time the streetlights had come on, recounted that they did not see him move during the half hour in which he was in view, although they did have the impression that his position had changed. But they also commented that it was odd that he hadn't reacted to any mosquitoes around, so they thought he was either drunk or asleep and didn't bother going to check on him. And witnesses said the body was in the same position as it had been when he was found the next morning. X marks the spot. This is where the Somerton Man was lying. There's a bench, which isn't mentioned anywhere, so I don't quite know why they pointed out the bench. It's like, cool, no one cares. One of the witnesses told the police she observed a man looking down at the sleeping man from the top of the steps that led to the beach. It says looking down at the sleeping man, but, I mean, if you're on these steps here, and he's lying against the wall, could you really tell that they were looking at him? Maybe you couldn't actually see them from there. Looking in that direction, at least. So there's the steps, and at the top of the steps is where this man was at some point, and then that's the children's home. It's 1948, so you kind of think that maybe someone would have. Like, I mean, nowadays, you see it all the time, don't you? Homeless people in the street and no one even glances. This part, which I only think I've read here, is that another witness came forward in 1959 and reported to the police that he and 3 others had seen a well-dressed man carrying another man on his shoulders along the beach the night before the body was found. Which is a bit like, I mean, one, it took you 11 years to come forward and say, oh yeah, by the way, I saw this. It's like, But according to the pathologist, the man was of Britisher appearance and thought to be aged about 40 to 45 in top physical condition. He was in top physical condition, but dead. He was 180 centimetres, or 5'11", with grey eyes, fair to ginger-coloured hair, which is slightly grey around the temples. Know how that feels. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, hands and nails that showed no signs of manual labour, big and little toes that met in a wedge shape, like those of a dancer, and pronounced high calf muscles consistent with people who regularly wear boots or shoes with high heels or perform ballet. He was dressed in a white shirt, red, white and blue tie, brown trousers, socks and shoes, a brown knitted pullover and fashionable grey and brown double-breasted jacket of reportedly American tailoring, and he also had a comb that was from the USA as well. All the labels on his clothes had been removed, and he had no hat, which back in those days, very unusual. No wallet, no ID, nothing whatsoever. He was clean shaven, and his dental records didn't match anyone completely unknown, and they believed that he had committed suicide just because he didn't have anything on him, which is kind of weird, because if you're going to do it somewhere like that, surely you'd have ID on you. The autopsy discovered that the time of death was around 2 a.m. on the 1st of December. So when those people had seen him sort of 7:30, 8:30, he was still alive. He was just asleep / drunk. And he hadn't passed away until 2 a.m. and then was found at around 6:30 a.m. So the heart was normal size, normal, no worries at all. Small vessels not commonly observed in the brain were easily discernible with congestion. There was congestion of the pharynx, and the gullet was covered with whitening of superficial layers of the mucosa with a patch of ulceration in the middle of it. The stomach was deeply congested. There was congestion in the second half of the duodenum. There was blood mixed with the food in the stomach. Both kidneys were congested, and the liver contained a great excess of blood in its vessels. The spleen was strikingly large, about 3 times the normal size. There was destruction of the centre of the liver lobules. Not sure what a liver lobule is, but acute gastritis hemorrhage, extensive congestion of the liver and spleen, and congestion to the brain. I mean, I suppose the great physical state on the outside, he looked great, and then we looked inside him and oh damn. The autopsy also showed that the man's last meal was a pasty eaten 3 to 4 hours before death, but tests failed to reveal any foreign substance in the body. The pathologist concluded, "I am quite convinced the death could not have been natural. The poison I suggested was a barbiturate or a soluble hypnotic." Although poisoning remained a prime suspicion, the pasty was not believed to be the source. Other than that, the coroner was unable to reach a conclusion as to the man's identity, cause of death, or whether the man was seen alive at Somerton Beach on the evening of the 30th of November was the same man, as nobody had seen his face. The body was then embalmed on the 10th of December after the police were unable to get a positive identification. The police said this was the first time they knew that such action was needed. You don't think you need to ID someone? Like, oh yeah, there's a dead body on the beach, who is it? Yeah, 9 days later, they realised that maybe they should look into who it was. The next part interests me quite a lot. So, this picture is of the items that were found on him. Sort of sketch drawing. So we got the train and bus ticket. There's the comb that's American. On the other side there is the juicy fruit chewing gum, the packet of cigarettes that had different style cigarettes inside, and a box of matches. So it was Army Club cigarette packet, which are British, and then inside it had Ken Sisters Club cigarettes, which are Scottish, apparently. So they're very UK. It's a bit annoying that they've put that piece of paper in, because that comes later. That is one of the main reasons I'm interested in this story. But yes, those are items found on him. However, on the 14th of January 1949, staff of the Adelaide railway station discovered a brown suitcase with its label removed. Yeah, so on the 14th of January 1949, so a month and a half after the body had been found, staff at Adelaide train station, which is obviously 11 kilometres away from where the body was found. The Somerton Man did have a railway ticket on him from Adelaide. But yeah, so staff in the train station found this suitcase. which had been checked into the station cloakroom after 11 a.m. on the 30th of November. It was believed that the suitcase was owned by the man found on the beach. In the case were a red checked dressing gown, which I think they've left in there, but look at this picture, a size 7 red felt pair of slippers, 4 pairs of underpants, pyjamas, shaving items, a light brown pair of trousers with sand in the cuffs, an electrician's screwdriver, a table knife cut down into a short sharp instrument, man got a shiv, a pair of scissors with sharpened points, a small square of zinc thought to have been used as a protective sheath for the knife and the scissors, and a stenciling brush as used by third officers on merchant ships for stenciling cargo. He had a table knife, which is, fairly lengthy, sharpened down. He had a pair of scissors with very sharp points. He was protecting them so that they didn't dull or anything. There, where that knife is sort of much more pointed than a normal sort of butter knife is, So also in the suitcase was a thread card of Barber brand orange wax thread of an unusual type not available in Australia, which I'm pretty certain they worked out came from America, but that's what that is. It was the same type that was used to repair the lining in a pocket of the trousers that the dead man was wearing at the time. All identification marks on the clothes had been removed, but police found the name T. Keane on a tie, on this tie here. Keane was on a laundry bag, so T. Keane, as you can sort of see there, is Keane. Keane on a laundry bag, which was Keane, and then Keane, Kean, on an undershirt, along with 3 dry cleaning marks. Police believe that whoever removed the clothing tags either overlooked the items or purposely left Keane tags on the clothes, knowing Keane was not the dead man's name. With wartime rationing still in force, clothing was difficult to acquire at the time, so it's common practice to use name tags. It was also common to buy second-hand clothing and remove the tags of the previous owners. What was unusual was there was no spare socks found in the case, and again, there was no ID, no wallet, nothing, although the police found pencils and unused letter stationery. A search concluded that no T. Keane was missing in any English-speaking country. A nationwide circulation of the dry cleaning marks also proved fruitless. All that could be garnered from the suitcase was that the front gusset and feather stitching on a coat found in the case indicated it had been manufactured in the United States. The coat had not been imported, indicating that the man had been to the US or bought the coat from someone of a similar size who had been / picked it up second hand from someone who came from America. Police checked incoming train records and believed the man had arrived at the Adelaide station by overnight train from either Melbourne, Sydney or Port Augusta. They speculated he had showered and shaved at the adjacent city baths, although there was no bath ticket on the body, before returning to the train station to purchase a ticket for the 10:50 train to Henley Beach, which for whatever reason he missed or did not catch. He immediately checked his suitcase at the station cloakroom before leaving the station and catching a city bus to Glenelg. Although named City Baths, the centre was not a public bathing facility but rather a public swimming pool. The railway station bathing facilities were adjacent to the station cloakroom, which itself was adjacent to the station's southern exit onto North Terrace. The city baths on King William Street were accessed from the station's northern entrance. So, what I don't understand is why they think that he went and cleaned up at the baths, which was a swimming pool, rather than just going into the bathroom, where they got this idea that, he definitely left the train station and went to the swimming pool. Because it says here, there's no record of the station's bathroom facilities being unavailable. So, and it also sounds like he was rushing around a little bit. So, an inquest into the man's death conducted by coroner Thomas Erskine Cleland commenced a few days following the discovery of the body, but was adjourned until the 17th of June 1949. Cleland, as the investigating pathologist re-examined the body, made a number of discoveries. He noted that the man's shoes were remarkably clean and appeared to have been recently polished, rather than in a condition expected of a man who had apparently been wandering around the city all day, been to the beach. He added that this evidence fit in with the theory that the body may have been brought to Somerton Park Beach after the man's death, accounting for the lack of evidence of vomiting, convulsions, which are 2 physiological reactions to poison, or the poisons that they knew about. Cleland speculated that as none of the witnesses could positively identify the man they saw the previous night, there remained the possibility the man had died elsewhere and had been dumped. He stressed that this was purely speculation, as all the witnesses believed it was definitely the same person, as the body was in the same place, lying in the same position. He also found no evidence indicating the identity of the deceased. Cedric Stanton Hicks, Professor of Physiology and Pharmacology at the University of Adelaide, testified that of a group of drugs, variants of drugs in that group he called number 1, and in particular number 2, were extremely toxic in a relatively small oral dose that would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to identify, even if it had been suspected in the first instance. He gave Cleveland a piece of paper with the names of 2 drugs, which was entered as Exhibit C. The names were not released to the public until the 1980s, as at the time they were quite easily procurable by the ordinary individual. Like, let's not tell people how to untraceably poison each other, shall we? The drugs were later publicly identified as Digitales and Uiban, both cardinaloid type cardiac glycosoids. Hicks noted the only fact not found in relation to the body was evidence of vomiting. He then stated his absence was not unknown, but that he could make a frank conclusion without it. Hicks stated that if death had occurred 7 hours after the man was last seen to move, it would imply a massive dose that could still have been undetectable. It was noted that the movement seen by witnesses at 7 p.m. could have been a convulsion. Now things get interesting. As I said at the beginning of the stream, the reason this story came into my knowledge, I was listening to a BBC Sounds podcast, and it was dramatisation, but it was done as a true crime podcast within the podcast. It was really good. But they mentioned a book, it's the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And in one of the bonus episodes, they spoke about the Rubaiyat and then spoke about this story. And it was just like, And that's when I went and found out about this story. And it was like, what? This is insane. So, around the same time as the inquest, a tiny piece of rolled up paper with the words Tamamshud printed on it was found in a fob pocket sewn shut within the dead man's trouser pocket. Public library officials called it to translate. The text identified it as a phrasing meaning ended or finished or it's finished, which is found on the last page of Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The paper's verso side was blank. Police conducted an Australia-wide search to find a copy of the book that had a similarly blank verso. A photograph of the scrap paper was released to the press. Following a public appeal by the police, the copy of Rubaiyat from which the paper had been torn was located. A man showed police a 1941 edition of Edward Fitzgerald's translation of the Rubaiyat. Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean, who led the initial investigation, often protected the privacy of witnesses in public statement by using pseudonyms. Lean referred to the man who found the book by the pseudonym Ronald Francis, and he has never been officially identified. Francis had not considered the book might be connected to the case until he had seen an article in the newspaper. There is some uncertainty about the circumstances in which the book was found. One newspaper article refers to the book being found about a week or 2 before the body. Former South Australian police detective Jerry Feltus, who dealt with the matter as a cold case, reports that the book was found just after the man was found on the beach. The timing is significant as the man is presumed, based on the suitcase, to have arrived in Adelaide the day before he was found on the beach. If the book was found 1 or 2 weeks before, it suggests that the man had visited previously or had been there for a longer time. Most accounts state that the book was found in an unlocked car parked in Jetty Road, Glenelg, either in the rear footwell or on the back seat. Most say it was after the body had been found. Not many say it was before, but the theme of Rubaiyat is that one should live life to the fullest. It's a book of poems. Live your life, carpe diem. They did tests and matched up the tear and everything. So if this book was there before, then obviously he was there before, or the book was there before and he had the piece of paper. So, someone's going backwards and forwards between them. So obviously at the moment they're thinking he travelled to Adelaide station on the 30th of November, had a shave and whatnot, checked his suitcase in, buggered off down to Glenelg, and then died. But now they found this piece of paper that was sewn shut inside his trouser pocket, which is from a book that they found in a car in Glenelg, in the city where the body was. But yeah, if it was before, if someone had found this book and was like, oh, it's this one, found it, 10th of November, is like, but he didn't turn up until the 30th of November. So yeah, but as I said, most reports say it was after, which would obviously make sense. Why it would be in a car is a different question, because everyone seems to think that he got the bus / train, whatever, to the city, so why would he ever have a car? That's something that I don't think ever been mentioned. But yeah, so the book was missing the words Tamron should on the last page. Microscopic tests indicated that the piece of paper was torn from this book. Also in the back of the book were faint indentations representing 5 lines of text in capital letters. The second line had been struck out, a fact that was considered significant due to its similarities to the 4th line and the possibility that it represents an error in encryption. So they worked out that this was written in the, I think it was on the back cover, or it's just in the back of the book. So, yeah, so a load of random crap. But as you can see, the second line here has got a strike through it, MLIAOLDL. And then down here you've got MLIABOAI. So they have a feeling that he was sort of writing something down and then maybe worked out something different. Yes, so in the book it's unclear whether the first line begins with an M or a W. It is believed to be a W, owing to the distinctive difference when compared to the stricken letter M directly underneath it. Maybe it's not even a letter at all, maybe it's a little code. But it's never been decoded. Initially the letters were thought to be words in a foreign language. Doubt it. Code experts were called in at the time to decipher but were unsuccessful, and amateurs have also attempted to crack it. In 1978, following a request from ABC, Department of Defense cryptographers analysed the handwritten text, reported that it would be impossible to provide a satisfactory answer if the text were an encrypted message. Its brevity meant that it had insufficient symbols from which a clear meaning could be extracted. And in 2004, retired detective Jerry Feltus, who'd been looking at it as a cold case, suggested in a Sunday Mail article that the final line, ITTMTSAMSTGAB, could stand for the initials if it's time to move to South Australia Mosley Street. Mosley Street was the main road through Glenelg. In 2009 to 2011, Derek Abbott's team concluded that it was most likely that each letter was the first letter of a word. A 2014 analysis by computational linguist John Reeling strongly supports the theory that the letters consist of the initials of some English text, but finds no match for these in a large survey of literacy. So they really feel like it's sort of like shorthand, so, you know, it's time to move, whatever. But no one can work out what it, you know, if it was copied from something, no fucking clue. Also in the back of the book was a phone number that belonged to a nurse named Jessica Ellen Jo Thompson, born Jessie Harkness in the Sydney suburb of Marrickville, who lived in Mosley Street, Glenelg, which is partly why they kind of think that it might have been Mosley Street, but it was about 400 metres north of where the body was found. When she was interviewed by police, Thompson said that she did not know the dead man or why he would have a phone number and choose to visit her suburb on the night of his death. There's Miss Thompson. Jessie reported that sometime in late 1948, an unidentified man had attempted to visit her and asked a next-door neighbour about her. In his book on the case, Jerry Feltus stated that when he interviewed Thompson in 2002, he found that she was either being evasive or did not wish to talk about it. Feltus believed Thompson knew something about his identity, and Thompson's daughter Kate, in a television interview in 2014, also said that she believed her mother knew the dead man, which would make sense as to why he'd have her phone number. In 1949, Jessica Thompson requested that police not keep a permanent record of her name or release her details to third parties, as it would be embarrassing and harmful to her reputation to be linked to such a case. The police agreed, a decision that hampered later investigations. Thompson, frequently referred to by various pseudonyms, including the nickname Jestin and names such as Teresa Johnson Nepal. Thompson's real name was considered as important because it may be the decryption key for the purported code. When she was shown the plaster cast bust of the dead man, Thompson said she could not identify the person depicted. I don't have a picture of the plaster cast, but in fairness, it looks nothing like the body. So, according to Lean, he described her reaction upon seeing the cast as completely taken aback to the point of giving the appearance that she was about to faint. In an interview many years later, Paul Lawson, the technician who made the cast and was present when Thompson viewed it, noted that after looking at the bust, she immediately looked away and would not look at it again. Thompson also said that while she was working at Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney during World War II, she had owned a copy of the Rubaiyat. In 1945 at Clifton Gardens Hotel in Sydney, she had given it to an Australian Army lieutenant named Alf Boxall. Thompson told police that after the war ended she had moved to Melbourne and married. She said that she had received a letter from Boxall and replied telling him that she was now married, and then it just seems quite... There's no evidence that Boxall then tried to get hold of her after. As a result of their conversations with Thompson, police suspected that Boxall was the dead man. However, in July 1949, Boxall was found in Sydney with the final page of his copy of the Rubaiyat was intact, and it had the words Tam and Shud were still there, and it was also signed by Jessica Harkness, Jesse Thompson. So, sort of proved that she had given it to him because she signed it, and it also had the Tam and Shud in the back, so it wasn't that copy at all. However, Jessica Thompson's reactions and stuff was like, you sus. When she told Alf Boxall that she was married, they think she was kind of lying because he was getting a divorce from his first wife, and that they didn't marry until into the 50s. But yeah, I mean, reading all that, all of her reactions and stuff, I get seeing a picture of a dead body might be a bit but she wants to be as far distanced as possible from this, and then obviously seeing the plaster cast and 2 people saying she was not happy about this really makes me think that she knew who it was. But so in 1949, the body of the unknown man was buried in Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery, where the Salvation Army conducted the service. The headstone says, "Here lies the unknown man who was found on Somerton Beach." Flowers began appearing. Police questioned a woman seen leaving the cemetery but claimed she knew nothing of the man. About the same time, Ina Harvey, the receptionist from the Strathmore Hotel opposite Adelaide's railway station, revealed that a strange man had stayed in room 21 or 23 for a few days around the time of the death, checking out on the 30th of November 1948. She recalled that he was English speaking and only carrying a small black case, not unlike one a musician or doctor might carry. When an employee looked inside the case, he told Harvey he had found an object inside the case as looking like a needle. Now, what I don't quite understand is why someone's looking in this case. On 22nd of November 1959, so 11 years later, it was reported that one E.B. Collins, an inmate of New Zealand's Whanganui prison, claimed to know the identity of the dead man. That guy claimed he knew the dead man, that was it. Cool. So in 1994, they pretty much as they could, said that it was poison. They supported it by saying that obviously all of the organs were screwed. There was no natural disease, there was no sort of cancerous cells, yada, nothing like that found, and there was nothing else microscopically that could count it for death. Not there was no needle puncture into the lungs or anything like that. So they're pretty certain that it was one of these. Again, whether it was himself or someone had given it to him, different question. There has been persistent speculation that the dead man was a spy due to the circumstances and historical context of his death. Obviously, just after the war, tensions between the East and West still. At least 2 sites relatively close to Adelaide were of interest to spies: the Radium Hill uranium mine and the Woomera Test Range, an Anglo-Australian military research facility. The man's death also coincided with the reorganisation of Australian security agencies, which would culminate the following year with the founding of the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation. This would be followed by a crackdown on Soviet espionage in Australia, which was revealed by intercepts of Soviet communications under the Venona Project. Another theory concerns Alf Boxall, who was reportedly involved in intelligence work during and immediately after World War II. In a 1978 television interview, Stuart Littlemore asked, "Mr. Boxall, you had been working, hadn't you, in an intelligence unit before you met this young woman, Jess? Did you talk to her about that at all?" In reply, Boxall says, "No." And when asked if Harkness could have known, Boxall replies, "Not unless somebody else told her." When Littlemore suggested in the interview that there may have been an espionage connection to the dead man in Adelaide, Boxall replies, "It's quite a melodramatic thesis, isn't it?" I like how Boxall is just really? Sure. Exactly. I mean, the spy theory kind of holds true with the fact that no one knows who the fuck he is. Could have been a Russian spy, So he could have been working for the Soviets, which is why he had British cigarettes, American clothing, yada yada, to really throw it off. And obviously he had that code as to whatever the hell it was. The spy theory really held a lot. There's the H.C. Reynolds theory, which is in 2011, an Adelaide woman contacted biological anthropologist Macy Henneberg about an ID card of a H.C. Reynolds that she had found in her father's possessions. The card, a document issued in the United States to foreign seamen during World War I, was given to Henneberg in October 2011 for comparison of the ID photograph to that of the Somerton Man. While Henneberg found anatomical similarities in features such as the nose, lips and eyes, he believes that they were not as reliable as the close similarity of the ear. The ear shapes shared by both men were a very good match, although Henneberg also found what he called a unique identifier, a mole on the cheek that was the same shape and the same position. Together with the similarity of the ear characteristics, this mole in a forensic case would allow me to make a rare statement positively identifying the Somerton Man. The ID card numbered 58757 was issued in the United States on 28th of February 1918 to H.C. Reynolds, given his nationality as British and age as 18, so making him 48, roughly what they thought. Searches conducted by the US Archives, the UK Archives and the Australian Archives have failed to find any records relating to H.C. Reynolds. The South Australia Police Major Crime Branch, who still have the case listed as open, will investigate the new information. Researchers believe the ID card belonged to Horace Charles Reynolds, a Tasmanian man who died in 1953, and therefore obviously was not. In October 2011, an interest in the case resurfaced. Attorney General John Rao refused to exhume the body, stating there needs to be public interest reasons that go well beyond public curiosity or broad scientific interest. Feltus, the ex-detective that was looking at it, said he was still contacted by people in Europe who believed the man was a missing relative but did not believe an exhumation and find the man's family grouping would provide answers. During that period, so many war criminals changed their names and came to different countries. Who knows? In October 2019, Attorney General Vicky Chapman granted approval for his body to be exhumed, which they made a start on there, to extract DNA for analysis. The parties interested in the analysis agreed to cover the costs. A potential granddaughter's DNA is planned to be compared to the unknown man's. An exhumation was carried out on the 19th of May 2021, so it still took 2 years after it was granted. Police stated that the remains were in reasonable condition and were optimistic about the prospect of DNA recovery. The remains were deeper in the ground than previously thought, which they said at the time was weird, because they didn't quite understand why, especially if it was a John Doe. It was reported that the body was exhumed as part of Operation Persevere and Operation Persist, which are investigating historical unidentified remains in South Australia. So, there is a conclusion, mostly. So in March 2009, a University of Adelaide team led by Professor Derek Abbott began an attempt to solve the case through cracking the code. Abbott tracked down the Barber wax cotton, the orange string, and found packaging variations which may provide clues to the country where it was purchased. It was determined that the letter frequency in the code was considerably different from letters written down randomly. The frequency was to be further tested to determine if the alcohol level of the writer could change the distribution. They observed that the format of the code also appeared to follow the quatrain format of Rubaiyat, leading them to theorise that the code was a one-time pad encryption algorithm. They also concluded that it seemed like each letter was the first letter of a word, which was like, cool. Everyone said that. An investigation has shown that the Somerton Man's autopsy reports are now missing, and the collection of Cleland's notes do not contain anything on the case. Macy Henneberg, Professor of Anatomy, examined images of the Somerton Man's ears and found that his upper ear hollow is larger than his cavum, which is lower ear hollow, a feature possessed by only 1 to 2% of the Caucasian population. In May 2009, Abbott consulted with dental experts who concluded that the Somerton Man had hypodontia, which is a rare genetic disorder, feature present in only 2% of the general population. Abbott obtained a photograph of Jessica Thompson's eldest son, Robin, which clearly showed that he had not only a larger cimber than cavum, but also hypodontia. The chance that this was a coincidence has been estimated as between 1 in 10 million and 1 in 20 million. The media suggested that Robin Thompson, whose DNA test could link the Somerton Man to a short list of surnames, which along with existing clues to the man's identity could be the final piece of the puzzle. After discovering that Robin Thompson had died in 2009, Abbott contacted Rachel, the daughter, who had been adopted and grew up in New Zealand. The family has a painting of the Somerton Man hanging in their home, which is like, really? You've got a painting like this just hanging up in your home, like, obviously this isn't really part of the story, it's just fucking bizarre. However, Rachel Egan's DNA has been analysed and links were found to the grandparents of Prosper Thompson. So it looks like Robin Thompson was Prosper's son. In July 2013, Abbott released an artistic impression he commissioned of the Somerton Man, believing this might finally lead to an identification. All this time we've been publishing the autopsy photo, and it's hard to tell what something looks like from that. In December 2017, Abbott announced 3 excellent hairs at the right development stage for extracting DNA had been found on the plaster cast of the corpse and had been submitted for analysis. While much of the DNA is degraded, in February 2018, the University of Adelaide team obtained a high-definition analysis of the mitochondrial DNA from the hair sample of the Somerton Man. They found that the Somerton Man belonged to haplogroup H4A1A1A, possessed by only 1% of Europeans. However, mitochondrial DNA is only inherited through the maternal line and therefore cannot be used to investigate a hereditary link between Rachel Egan, Abbott's wife, and the Somerton Man. Now, Somerton Man was exhumed last year, and on the 26th of July this year, less than a month ago, Abbott announced that he and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick had determined that the man was Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker born on November 16, 1905 in Footscray, Melbourne. Abbott claimed his DNA identification from strands of hair found in the plaster cast. Through investigative genetic genealogy, matches were found for descendants of 2 first cousins of Webb's, both on the paternal and on the maternal side, indicating a high likelihood that the Somerton Man was either Webb or a brother of, a sibling. Webb had resided in Victoria and had a brother-in-law named Thomas Keane, who lived a 20-minute drive away from him, which would explain the name of some of the clothes in the suitcase. No death record for Webb exists. His last known records date to April 1947, where he left his wife Dorothy Doff, after which she filed for divorce. In 1951, Dorothy was reportedly in Butte, South Australia, 144 kilometres away from Adelaide. According to Abbott, Webb had possibly tried to track her down. Abbott's research indicates Webb enjoyed betting on horses, thus the coded message could be horses' names. Webb also fond of poetry and had written some of his own, which might explain why he had a copy of the Rubaiyat. However, none of Webb's still living relatives had known him in person, nor are there any known photographs of him. Forensic Science South Australia, who is still investigating, declined to comment. South Australia police have not verified the result, but stated they were cautiously optimistic that this may provide a breakthrough. A few days later, the ABC published photos of Webb's brother Roy Webb, who died as a prisoner of war during World War II, and they claim that it resembles the Somerton Man. So, this is a picture of Robert Webb, the brother from the war, and this is the autopsy photo of the Somerton Man, who we think may be Carl Webb. I can see where they're coming up. This is the thing. So they're very, very certain that the DNA, obviously, especially nowadays, DNA is testing is a lot better than it was in 1948-49. And looking at those photos, definitely a lot of similarity there. But there's no reason at the moment as to why. If he was trying to track down his wife, do you not carry on trying to track her down? I assume that she lived in the city that was, 100 kilometres away. 100 kilometres, but near-ish, to Adelaide. Maybe they had words and she was just like, no, we're not getting back with you. Screw you. So he went and took his own life. Nowhere does it say how fast acting the poisons are. Are they known that they're poisons? Could he have gone into a chemist, bought a bottle, had a sip, binned that, and gone for a walk along the beach, and then, sat down for a cigarette? But the other thing about identifying him is, if it is him, obviously it was all circulated in the news, TV, radio, yada yada yada. You would have thought that Dorothy, especially if she was living nearer to Adelaide at this point, would have seen it. You'd expect her to know who it was. I mean, if the rest of the family are sort of up in Melbourne, maybe they don't quite see the news. Maybe she didn't give a shit, or she did something with it. Could have been her, or someone that she knows. There was the man that stayed in the hotel near Adelaide Station who had a needle in his bag, in his doctor's bag, because obviously he talks about he left her and then she filed for divorce. Yeah, so at the moment, the Somerton Man may be Carl Charles Webb. We just don't know for 100% certain if it is and why he died. It seems very conclusive that he was poisoned. I love the story because there's just so much different, like, you know, body found on the beach, no ID on it, fair enough. And then the, you know, torn piece of paper, and then they find the book, and then there's this weird code, and then there's a suitcase sort of thing back in Adelaide, and it's got some stuff in it, and it's got this random name in it, and it's just crazy. Thanks for joining. Bye!